Greetings, friends. This one will be a little bit deeper than usual. Make sure you're nice and relaxed before listening. I want to take you to a dark world, the grim reality of a story you may have heard before, but never quite like this. I have 3 special guests appearing today. I'm Mr. X, and welcome to episode 3 of Twisted Children's Tales.
I'm so delighted you decided to come for dinner. Tell me, boy, how many times did you think you could escape me? What crept into your primitive mind to make you fancy yourself my better? You fool. Look, there, on my mantle. Do you see that desiccated, severed foot? Yes, I know you do. It belonged to your father. He was smarter than you by far, but unfortunately for him, he was also much older, much slower. His flesh was tougher than yours will be. I kept him in the same cage you're sitting in right now, with your pitiful little eyes begging for mercy. Your father would be ashamed to see you now. Unlike you, he was stoic, right up until I started the arduous process of boiling him alive. I had to hold his head under the water with a wooden spoon, just to avoid burning myself. I must say, though, it was worth it. I enjoyed every exquisite bite of the pie I put him in. If you feel the need to scream, I understand. Just let it out. It will be over, well, whenever you embrace the sweet release of death.
3 children scurried up to the front door of their home, frantically searching for their mother. The family lived in the hollowed-out trunk of a gigantic tree. Baskets made from woven pine needles and pieces of discarded string and wire sat atop shelves, carved into the wooden walls. They found their mother dusting off her large feet, having just walked in the door with a basket full of assorted forest berries and leaves hanging from her arm. They jumped up and down in a panic, speaking over each other and crying out that their brother had been captured and may be in grave danger. Mother's face fell as her chest collapsed in a deep sigh. Her large, dark brown eyes darted about, as if she were reading an invisible book. After hundreds of thoughts flew through her mind, her eyes closed softly, and she began to sob, bitterly. Somehow she knew that this time, her son was gone forever. She knew why, and she even knew who did it. With her bravest face painted on like whitewash on a rotted picket fence, she struggled to calm her agitated young ones. She had lost her husband just last year. The story she always told the children was that he had an accident in a nearby garden and ended up being put in a pie. It was almost an attempt at glossing over the tragedy of losing their father, but it seemed to work as needed. The kids never appeared to put much thought into it. It was simply what happened. They moved on with time, knowing that he was never coming home. However, Mother asked herself, will they ever be able to heal from the loss of their beloved brother? Their father was a mostly distant presence to them. He spent as much time with them as he did with his 3 or 4 other families he had started throughout the forest. They were far enough apart that they never really interacted with each other, but he did try his best to provide for them all. She believed it was his need to feed all of his families, all of his children, that made him desperate enough to regularly steal from Mr. McGregor's garden. It was the need to fulfill his duties, which led to his ultimate demise. The children huddled closely around Mother's legs, looking up with a heartbreaking innocence, waiting for some semblance of comfort. She looked down upon them and told them that their brother was never coming home. She felt her heart harden as the words oozed from her lips and fell upon the children's ears like drops of hot wax. They froze in their place, completely dumbfounded, as she reached her arms around all three of them, pulling them in closely. The weeping of their little family could be heard late into the night. It was not until shortly before dawn that the children shuffled into their once crowded cubbyhole of a room in the tree home, now with one less brother to warm the space. The first glints of sunlight crept in through the door, made of tightly bound stalks of dry grass. They all decided that they had to go to the garden and find a way to rescue their lost brother. They weren't giving up, even if their mother had. They all knew how to get there, and despite their mother's constant warnings, they had to be sure.
"He's the strongest one of us all,"
one of them said.
"If anyone can survive Mr. McGregor, it's him."
Their little hearts swelled with optimism and determination as they made a pact. No turning back now. They were going to bring their brother home. As the night moved on, the children never slept. Their movements were nearly silent as they went about the house, gathering the supplies they would need to mount a full assault on Mr. McGregor's home. They gnawed off thick splinters of wood into sharp daggers which they would carry in their mouths. None of them had ever found the courage to get close enough to the garden and see what their enemy looked like. In fact, they'd never even laid eyes on a human before, but the plight of their poor brother had them filled with fire and daring. They decided they would scout the area during the coming day and effect the rescue that very night. The children discussed how to go about ending the man's life and rescuing their brother. The smartest of the siblings, Flo, reminded the others that one of their friends once passed away tragically, bleeding out after being cut by a sharp branch. She decided that if her kind could die of blood loss, it must be so that humans can as well. The plan was set. They would cut Mr. McGregor while he slept, hoping to cause enough injury to kill him. The trio headed for the door, the cool blue light of dawn reaching in and making for a surreal moment. The feeling was ominous, yet they were full of a restrained hope. They pushed open the straw door to their tree-trunk home, only to be startled at the sight of their mother standing there with a basket hanging over her arm.
"What are you doing?"
she asked. Flo spoke up.
We were hungry and didn't know where you were."
"Go back inside, children. I have your breakfast here in this basket."
Mother sat them down at the table and set the basket down in front of them. She reached into the basket and gently placed a small, odd-looking piece of food in front of each one of them. The children were accustomed to eating wild berries, and even the occasional currant buns as a special treat, but the morsels laid out for them this time were not nearly as appealing.
"Eat,"
Mother demanded. Flo sniffed the object and cringed, her eyes watering at the sting of its odor. Her whiskers and long ears shot all around, her body unable to process the shocking scent. It was a brownish-gray hunk of fleshy dampness, with black ridges and bits of dirt smeared all over it. Trusting her mother, she took a small nibble and her expression immediately became more docile. Her brother Mo and her sister Kati stared at her, awaiting her approval before beginning to eat their own portions. The food was bitter, but once consumed, made them feel euphoric within seconds. The drab colors of their home began to come alive, and they heard beautiful sounds in the air. Every echo of every sound became a symphony of pleasure, and splashes of vibrant color spread across the walls and the table. They looked at their own paws and saw shapes morphing and dancing across their pads. Mother looked on in silence, sitting in a hewn wooden armchair near the table. She whispered under her breath,
"Do not test fate. He's gone, just like your father. You mustn't chase after him, because I cannot lose anyone else."
The children woke up and were stunned to see that night had already fallen. They crawled out of their room and saw that there were 3 more pieces of the mysterious food on the table waiting for them. They clamored to get their hands on it and began the wonderful cycle anew. The experience was similar, but significantly less spectacular the second time. This went on for several days. By the 7th day, they had grown accustomed to the bizarre food. Its bitter flavor was no longer noticeable, and the effects were almost non-existent. Flo was the first to realize that they had forgotten, abandoned their dire mission to save their brother. She approached Mo and Kati, shaking them at the shoulders to snap them out of the shallow trance they'd been in for the past week. Once they had their senses about them, she explained what they had done, wasting their days getting high. Their brother may already be dead. They failed him when he needed them the most. Flo wondered why Mother would give them such a thing, create an addiction in her own children and expose them to such unpredictable effects. She surmised that Mother knew of their plans and wanted to ensure they couldn't leave home. Flo stood before her brother and sister.
I know he may be dead, but we're going out tonight. We shall do one of 3 things: bring him back, avenge his death, or die trying.
When night fell, the trio set out with their daggers clenched firmly in their jaws. Sneaking past their mother as she slept in the den, they dashed off into the moonlit wilderness, bounding swiftly through the brush of the forest floor with skillful determination. Their soft, light leaps fell nearly silently on the dead leaves in an impressive, acrobatic display. They made their approach up to the chicken wire fence of Mr. McGregor's garden and circled around to find a way through. They came across a light blue, button-up jacket, half buried in the rich soil near a break in the fence that had been pried open. A large footprint pressed it into the dirt. It had belonged to their brother. Flo picked up the garment and sniffed it deeply, tears welling up in her eyes. She recognized the scent. She lowered it and fixed her gaze on the dim orange glow, coming from a window in the old log cabin where Mr. McGregor lived. The 3 young ones squeezed through the hole in the fence and darted toward the front door of the humble house. The door towered over them. It seemed to be almost as tall as the tree that they lived under, but somehow more imposing, with unnatural, straight-cut pieces of wood and shiny metal pieces bolted into it. Flo analyzed the door from top to bottom and realized that the lowest part of it was worn and exposed a gap that was just larger than the size of her head. She turned back to her siblings with a stern look and signaled for them to follow her. One by one, they pushed their way through the crack and into the house. They noticed unsettling warmth in the air and a savory smell that made their stomachs turn. Flo told Mo and Kati to stay in the shadows and began to make her way toward the faint glow. She began to hear a light crackling as she got closer, rounding a corner to see a large stone cavity in the wall with dying embers lining its floor. A black metal pot was hanging from a spit, bubbling over with some kind of thick broth. Flo squinted her eyes in disgust as she passed by the pot, searching for the resting place of the man they came to kill. Mo and Kati remained hidden, dutifully keeping watch for their sister, who was known to be both the smartest and the bravest of the 3. They watched as she disappeared from sight around another corner, when suddenly, the still night air was torn like a curtain by her scream. Flo fell backwards in horror and scrambled to get to her feet as her eyes fell upon a dreadful sight. Her brother's skin and fur were pinned to long wooden rods and stretched out to dry. His body was missing. Her tiny claws pattered against the floor as she scampered back to reunite with her siblings.
It's Peter. He's dead.
Mo and Kati watched on with their eyes wide with shock and confusion as Flo ran as fast as she could to get back to them. Suddenly, a large foot came down on her, crushing her head and killing her instantly. Mr. McGregor leaned over and lifted her tiny limp body off of the floor by the scruff of her neck
Ah, another rabbit for my pot. You can join your friend there.
He got to work with his knife and began skinning her as her muscles continued to twitch, her soft fur now bloodied and laced with dirt from the floor. He made quick work of the job before tossing her carcass into the pot alongside her brother. Poor Peter Rabbit. He plucked her heart from the small pile of her insides, washed it in a bowl of water, and popped it into his mouth. A disgusting, rubbery sound emanated from his lips as he chewed it. Mo and Kati were petrified with fear, holding their little paws tightly over their mouths to avoid making noise, their useless wooden daggers already dropped onto the floor. They held their breath as the menacing giant figure made his way back to his room. Mo's eyes rolled up into the back of his head as his body collapsed. Kati tried desperately to hold him up, but could not stop him from falling to the ground with a deafeningly loud thump, which caused Mr. McGregor to stop in his tracks, turning his head to reveal a crazed look on his face. His footsteps rocked the floors beneath the two young rabbits, as Kati tried frantically to wake her last remaining brother. Mo's eyelids fluttered as his consciousness returned to him, and he immediately sprang back up. The two ran for their lives as the man began chasing them. They forced their way under the door once again, tearing out tufts of fur to get through. Mr. McGregor burst the door open after them, sending it careening toward the two little ones and narrowly missing Mo's head. The man began to yell at them incoherently as they raced through the forest to get home. He continued to chase them, leaping over dead logs and dirtying his white and blue striped nightgown in the wet overgrowth. His speech slurred, and his movements became lazier with each step he took. The moonlight was the only thing illuminating their way as they saw the straw door to their treehouse in the distance. It seemed impossibly far away. The brother and sister crashed through the door, and their bodies slammed into the wall on the far side as their mother jumped up with a loud yelp. They called out to her for help, and she quickly leapt to their side.
What happened? What have you done? Where's Flo?
The children told their mother the grim news. Her face fell and her large ears drooped all the way down. Suddenly, Mr. McGregor's enormous pale hand tore through the straw door and reached into the home, stopping just short of the back wall and flailing about. In the dim light outside, his wild eyes could be seen spattered with white foam spilling from his mouth. Mother looked up at him with a cold, stoic expression as his finger movements slowed to an exhausted halt. His eyes darted around, and his breath became labored as he gradually lost momentum and began to collapse. Mother walked up alongside his arm, staring intently, while the children cowered at the wall behind her.
What's happening to you right now is simple. You are dying. You don't know this, but I've been feeding my children small doses of a poisonous mushroom for some time now. I have not enjoyed it, but you left me no choice. I knew they were strong of will and would defy me time and again. So I had to do something. Your death shall serve as my vengeance, for my husband, for my son Peter, and now for my daughter Flo. I know you cannot understand me, but I am not speaking these words for you. I am speaking them for me, and you vile creature. You shall never harm another innocent life again.
That very night, the mother and her remaining two children left the treehouse with nothing but a basket each. They left the giant corpse of the man who had taken everything from them to rot there. To this day, his bones lie hidden in the forest, not too far from his garden, with his hand stuck in the tree. Thanks for listening, friends. I hope you enjoyed this story. It took me several hours to write it. I thought of it after reading Peter Rabbit and asking the question, Why would a children's story feature a family of rabbits whose father was eaten by a human? It always seemed a bit dark, so I took the liberty of making it a bit darker. I'd like to know your thoughts on the story. Were you able to guess the story before I revealed it? Do you have a popular children's story that you'd like me to write about? Let me know in the comment section below. I'm especially interested in well-known children's stories from outside the United States. If you live outside the U.S., and you know an interesting and beloved children's story that you grew up hearing, I'd love to know about it. A special thanks to my good friend, Stephanie Swan Quills, for playing the voice of the mother rabbit, to Eden, the voice of Flo, and to my new friend, DrCreepenVanPasta, who played the voice of the sinister Mr. McGregor. Please go subscribe to their channels if you haven't already. Each of them is great in their own way. Until next time, friends, I'm Mr. X, and may your nights be full of dreams.